I know I asked the cop about the charter right, and he said, well, right now your rights are suspended. So, and I didn't know that worked that way.
A man has been issued a coronavirus fine for singing Christmas carols in a Manitoba park. Now, we are helping him fight back, but we need your help to do it. At Rebel News, we have an ambitious, but I think very important task before us. We are offering free lawyers to the first 1,000 Canadians from C to C to C who have been issued a coronavirus ticket. People across the country are being fined for doing completely Canadian things, opening the restaurants, opening their toy stores, gathering in church, or organizing political protests. People are being fined for doing completely normal things because the politicians are reacting to the coronavirus pandemic in the most abnormal of ways. They're quarantining and locking down completely healthy people. Well, it's our job here at Rebel News to remind these politicians that they cannot make a law that violates the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in this country. And that's why we are helping Jake Klassen from Reinfeld, Manitoba. He organized a singing service in a public park where everybody was socially distanced, at least 6 feet apart. Because church is canceled in Manitoba by order of the authoritarian premier, a so-called conservative named Brian Pallister, Jake and the other attendees gathered together but stood apart to sing Christmas carols and other Christian hymns. And the very next day, the cops showed up and ticketed Jake $1,296 for failure to comply with public health emergency orders. This is absolutely insane. I got in touch with Jake, and we're hiring Jake a lawyer to help him. I caught up with Jake this week to get his side of the story. Now, Jake's a trucker, and he's still working, thank God. So many people aren't. So I had to interview Jake on Zoom from the sleeper of his truck cab. Check it out. Jake, you have received a nearly $1,300 COVID fine because you were singing carols in a park and Christian hymns. You sent me the footage, and it looks like everybody is standing apart from each other. It looks like it's families, and then there's space, and then more families. But there's more to the story. Initially, you tried to go to a first park, but the police had the park blocked off. This is crazy to me.
Yeah, like we had planned this like 4 days prior to that. And so they, I guess over Facebook or somehow they heard about it. And so they, the day before in the evening, we checked if the park was blocked off, and it wasn't. And the morning we drove up there, they had barricaded the parking lot, and there was a cop waiting outside just parked on the side of the road there waiting to see. One of the guys stopped and talked to him for a while and said whoever was going to get a fine if we went in there. So we just decided to go to the other park where we had originally planned it, but there was no parking there, so everybody had to park on the street.
Now, this happened on a Sunday because
Yep.
Another thing that seems absolutely crazy to me, church services are closed in Manitoba. So if you want to go and worship with your brothers and sisters in Christ, you, I guess, have to do it standing in a park 6 feet apart. But even that's not allowed because, as it turns out, Monday morning, very next day, the police show up at your door. Am I right?
Yeah, well, they called and they told me to come down to the office.
And so what happens when you get there with the police?
They had me sit down and wait for a bit, and then they told me to come in, and then they said that it wasn't their job to hand out these tickets, but because I forget what group they said that was supposed to be handling that, they were way overwhelmed, so they were given the task to do this. Yeah,
I think Manitoba has given out over the course of, about a week, $180,000 worth of coronavirus tickets. And a lot of those are going to Christians and Christian churches who are trying to worship and sing together. Now, Jacob, we have hired a lawyer to help you fight this fine. The lawyer works for you. The lawyer doesn't work for us at Rebel News. We're going to crowdfund to help fight this fine. I bet we're going to beat this fine. We've beaten fines in New Brunswick and in Calgary and in Ontario already. And I think we're going to beat yours too, because I think we need to teach Brian Pallister a lesson that charter rights just don't go away because there's a pandemic happening.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I know I asked the cop about the charter right, and he said, well, right now your rights are suspended. So, and I didn't know that worked that way. So I know I have the whole conversation with the cop. I have that recorded as well. So
that's very smart. You're like a citizen journalist. One of our Fight the Fines cases in New Brunswick, Walter Matheson, he also recorded his interaction with the cop. And I think, as it turns out, that's probably one of the reasons why they didn't proceed with the case, was because the cop did not look very great. Now, Jake, do you have a message for the people at home who are going to donate to help you fight this fine? I mean, this is $1,300. That's a lot of money. We don't want you to pay it. It's Christmas time. We're going to help you fight.
Yeah, stand up and let's fight for our freedoms. I see it disappearing. I'm fighting for my kids. I had my kids there. I want them to see that when there is a cause, we need to stand up and fight together if it's worth it. And we're not breaking no laws. I don't see where we're breaking laws. So I wanted my kids to see it, and there was a lot of people there too, that they won't have the freedoms if we don't stand up now.
Now, you were not the only person fined that day, am I right?
No, there is, I believe, one other one, and they were saying they were going to find more people, but I don't know. I was also the one that had coffee and donuts on my truck. So they probably suspected me of being the organizer of it. So I don't know if that is why they picked me out, but they also recognized me. So I'm thinking maybe that would be why.
Well, Jacob, I know that you're a trucker. You're calling me from your truck right now. You're pulled over on the side of the road. And I want to thank you for taking the time to get in touch with me so that we can help you fight this fine. And I want to thank everybody at home for helping to donate to help you fight this fine as well.
I really appreciate you guys doing this.
Rebel News is crowdfunding a lawyer to help Jake, and that lawyer's name is David Anber, and I like David. He's a criminal lawyer from Ottawa, and he's agreed to take Jake's case. David sat down with me earlier to discuss his plan of attack. Take a listen. So, David, what about Jacob's case made you want to take it on?
Well, Sheila, we're seeing all across the country right now laws, and not even laws that are passed by legislators, but these decrees that are being issued by mayors and premiers that are really bad policy. They really infringe on people's rights. I mean, you look at this case, you have a bunch of people who are apparently socially distancing from the video I've seen, and otherwise just singing hymns. And if that's targeted by the law in question, and I question whether or not it is, that's certainly something that needs to be challenged.
You know, that's a very great point, because not only were they socially distant, but they were also outside in a park, one of the places where transmission is least likely. And to be clear, you don't work for us at Rebel News. You work for the client, Jacob. So you can't be very specific with me. But what is the vague legal strategy that you plan to approach this case with?
Well, I could say, Sheila, that everything is currently on the table. Haven't ruled anything out yet. We're still in the very early innings of this case. We're going to look at the constitutionality of the policy itself, or the application of the policy. And frankly, from what I know about the case, it's looking like we have a factually innocent client. So we're going to come at it certainly from that angle as well.
Now, it's almost hard to believe that we now live in a country where certain premiers who are alleged to be conservative, I'm looking at you, Brian Pallister, would now make singing Christian hymns in a public park standing 6 feet away from your friends and neighbors, an illegal activity, but that is the state of Manitoba right now. And I promised everybody in an earlier video that we were going to teach that out-of-control premier in Manitoba, Brian Pallister, and that out-of-control government and these out-of-control municipalities in Manitoba some lessons in civil liberties. And I like when people who are doing bad things are forced to learn things the hard way. I think Brian Pallister should learn something the hard way, courtesy of David Anber, but I need your help to do it. Anber is one of the best in the biz, and he's going to be working very hard, not only for Jake, but for all of the other Fight the Fines cases that we are rounding up from all across the country. And please stay tuned because there are so many more cases in the pipeline. That's where you at home come in. At Rebel News, we're creating a system to intake all these cases. We are connecting them with a lawyer, and then our journalists do the journalism side to tell the world about how the coronavirus is being used to snuff out freedoms here in Canada. But that doesn't happen easily and it doesn't come cheap. If you'd like to help Jake fight his ticket for singing Christmas carols in an empty public park, please go to fightthefines.com and donate today. While you're there, take a look at some of the other Fight the Fines cases that we've taken on. They are people from all walks of life. Some of them, they don't even seem like they would be Rebel supporters, and they probably weren't at the time. But at Rebel News, we don't have a values test to give before we help you fight for freedom. And also, at fightthefines.com, you can see some of our early successes, like now Rebel reporter Tamara Ugolini, who was fined for strolling on the beach in her hometown, like Artur Pawlowski, who was fined for feeding the homeless on a bitterly cold Calgary day. And then there's Walter Matheson, the man who was fined for eating a muffin alone in his car in a Tim Hortons parking lot in Hampton, New Brunswick. These are all people that we helped fight their fines, and they won. And Jake will win too with your help and the help of that lawyer, David Anber. Please go to fightthefines.com today and help me give the Manitoba government a real reality check. Thank you. I know we're going to make a difference for Jacob because we already have made a difference for so many. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Politicians all across this country are using the coronavirus pandemic to stomp all over your civil liberties while not on our watch. We plan to help 1,000 Canadians fight their coronavirus tickets, to support our efforts to defend civil liberties, to see some of the other cases and some of our other successes, and to tell us your story. Please go to fightthefines.com.